Thank you. How many minutes do I have?
As long as you want.
10,
Okay,
10
so
to 15 minutes,
Yeah.
G.
I
10
think
to
the
15,
person.
15 minutes also.
Okay, so I think the person who best understands FPC is right sitting there, Padmanabh ji. And this is it's not as soft as this. The topic is not as soft as we are softly debating. I think it is probably the most silently burning topic in the country, which not many people actually realize. First of all, I would want to start by saying that we are fighting a battle which is against the most powerful input traders and marketing syndicates in India. And I think that's what FPC aims to break. I mean, having heard all of your valuable comments, I want to state, I've heard Madam Shruti Kapoor mentioning about technology being an enabler, entrepreneurs, young people, global value chains. I've heard Dr. Priyadarshini talk about how it's crucial to support them in the early stages. Handhold them, bring out the behavioral change, make them understand, make them realize the importance of being together, how crucial it is to grow and realize value out of it. And very wonderfully put together thoughts. Similarly, Dr. Padmanabh mentioning about diversifying. I mean, his case, what he was stating about Assam, we've seen very live. There are, numerous cases in Assam where even before the FPO movement came, revenues largely arose out of handlooms, and it is very important when you're planning FPOs, especially in the context of what and Dr. Priyadarshini and Madam Shruti said. It's a crucial point which Padmanabh was making, that when you plan the FPOs, it's very important to understand and identify what are the possible sources of revenues. It's very often bluntly said, farmer hai, chalo, it will come from farm income only. No, it might come suddenly out of nothing but common sharing facilities. It might be a tractor, like where he was mentioning about tractor sharing. He was mentioning about drone. I've just come out from districts like Bagalkote and districts like Belgaum, Dharwad, and Assam, which are actually the sugar bowl of the country. The bulk of sugar production, can originate from there. Significant ethanol production can come from there. We are looking at diversification in Ministry of Petroleum. Where would all the ethanol come from? Where would all the maize rise from? Where would all the wheat come from? And at the same time, looking at food security. So it's going to be a very tough balance. All this requires very strong cooperation, very strong balancing of power centers. Very important to ensure that we don't break the syndicates in such a hard way that even syndicates are eventually marketers. They should not be broken to such an extent that they just totally run away. It's very important for them to play a role, but at the same time play a role in such a way that they don't cut down the value of the produce that farmers run away on the other side. It's very important that we don't make very very radical changes which brings morale down of people. I heard Prakar and Zaidi mentioning about data, how important it is for financial institutions to have data to extend credit. That's a very, very important point, because often in the priority sector lending, banks are reluctant to issue because the problem of NPAs. You can see what's the systemic problem HDFC Bank is facing today. You can see what are the systemic issues, smaller banks. You can see the Paytm. So across the banking system, you see what's happening, especially in the last 1 month. The concern is about KYC. Concern is about transparency. Concern is about documentation being proper. Concern is about how effective is the compliance at the village level. Now, farmers are not expected to know all this, but then this is where the role of the resource institution, which is going to handhold and support the FPOs, comes in. And that is where I feel Dr. Priyadarshini's point and Madam Kapoor's point on technology is very critical. We need to leverage technology. We need to educate people to learn the technology. It's not easy at all. Farmers are reluctant. Cash flows are the only method which will keep them interested in the FPOs. If you don't give them cash flows, I mean, you don't have to hand over money to them. If you don't show the road towards cash flow very, very clearly, I can assure you that they will run away. And that's exactly why, we have 75% of our FPOs not really succeeding. There was a World Bank team lead, I forgot his name. I think it was Dr. Padmanabh, who was the guy who was heading the World Bank project.
Manivandan Pati or?
The other one, the one who came new.
नहीं याद
The
नहीं.
Uzbekistan guy.
अच्छा अच्छा. No.
I forgot. He's written an interesting
Okay.
article,
Okay.
and it says across the world, forget India, across the world, 65% of the FPOs shall fail. He says
Absolutely.
shall.
Absolutely.
Now, that's very interesting observation.
He
You
will
know
say
why?
90% without support.
Yeah. I mean, he says across the world,
Absolutely.
65% shall fail. I mean, even in developed economies, even in economies which are closer to ecosystems, or probably, countries where the systems are very much in place, there also they fail. Now, in India, it's not surprising that they fail, but then, at the grassroots level, the systems are not there. So there is a lot of fight among the people that who will be on the board of directors of the, farmer producer organization. That itself is the starting point of the friction, and most of the FPOs die there itself. And even if they succeed there and then they go ahead and start producing something, the next challenge is whether they are able to get inputs at a reasonable price, whether they are able to address their marketing challenges. These are all very serious issues. I was reading a paper a couple of days back. Somebody compared how Punjab and Gujarat FPOs had succeeded. There are debates around whether the registration of FPO should be under the Companies Act or whether it should be under the Cooperatives Act. I have personally favored the Companies Act, but there are evidences from Gujarat which says that the Cooperatives Act is probably more effective in reaching out to the farmers. Now, probably that arises from Green Revolution and the dairy cooperatives. But dairy cooperatives are there in Assam also. But Assam's dairy cooperatives, you see, if you go to veterinary department in Assam, you'll realize that there are 5,200 dairy cooperatives which have been registered, and probably 3 or 4 of them are functional. 5,004, 98% of them are not functional. So it's probably a mix of not just the institutional and the instrument which is available as a legal tool to create it, but also realizing what is the local ecosystem supporting, what are the needs, what are the somebody mentioned about needs assessment, and I think it was Dr. Priya Darshini, if I was right. It's very important to the earlier stages itself to analyze this. Spend more time with the FPOs. Don't give them false promises. Tell them it's going to take time. Let them spend it initially as an additional income and not just a primary activity. Over a period of time, you'll realize that only those who are really serious would come onto the board. So, some couple of closing points. I think it's quite a lot of discussion, and as I said, this is not a topic which can be covered in 45 minutes. It's the most raging topic. You saw how the government of India itself had to bring those legislation and roll it back, not because they were afraid of it, but because we still feel there is probably another good opportunity where it can be introduced when people are ready for it, though it was the perfect right time then itself. So sustainability does not just mean environment. Often get confused. People get confused on it. Sustainability is about cash flows, and in the FPC context, if there is no cash flow, there is no FPC. That's a guarantee. I would, having worked in the FPO space for quite some time, I can assure you there's only one. Sustainability has just one definition for farmers: they need income. And if they don't have that, the FPC is not there. Extension services. Now, let's take an example of extension services. If you really look at analyzing the agriculture department manpower in most states, you will see that the lowest level staff is something called as village level extension worker. In most states, these positions are vacant. So Padmananji would probably, as a professor, they would have analyzed it. How many states in India have extension level services fulfilled? I think only a handful. Rest of them would have all vacant.
Absolutely.
Now this is exactly what has killed farmers in India. There's no extension services. Now this is where every company in India can start focusing on FPOs, and I would in fact take a step further by saying, urging Dr. Priyadarshini that once you take an FPO, I mean, this is something which every company should do. Stay with that FPO for 10 years. Stay with that FPO for 15 years. They need a very long hand-holding side. It takes 15 years for children to grow up. So, it takes, similarly, FPOs are children. They just cannot sustain. They'll have their own attitudes. And with the hundreds of people and young people in the group, it's going to be even more challenging. So extension services have to be provided to the FPOs, and the only way that can be done is, do through the private setup and not through the government setup, and ensuring that these behavioral changes are made in such a way that they focus towards input procurements and output sale in a very market driven way. Drone services, as I can see that Rashtriya Chemicals and Fertilizers has launched a huge drone. The drone can really fly up and spread a lot of seeds, a lot of insecticides, a lot of pesticides. I was last 3 months I have personally seen at least 500 demonstrations of those drones being distributed. It's like a fun. Everybody is just coming to see the drone. They really don't realize the value of the drone till they are told भाई इसको खरीदने के लिए 75,000 देना पड़ेगा. Then they ask पैसा कौन देगा. That's where then the debate about value starts coming in. Otherwise, they feel they're very happy with the demonstration, and anybody is coming spraying in, they will just say, "यार मेरे खेतों में कर दो." But then when you say it's chargeable, they start valuing it. So that's where the education starts coming in. So drones can be a huge one. Small processing. I mean, not all the FPOs realize that processing is a very significant income for them. That's very important, and I think it's a separate chapter on training themselves on value addition. Somebody mentioned value chains, and value chain is not knowledge which is there in the FPOs, and that needs to be built up, and this needs a long time. Um, Women role very, very crucial, no doubt about that. I mean, FPOs where the registration of women is more than 50%, that's the primary members. It's often seen that the men also contribute effectively. So that's very, very critical technology, and women they combine together to bring the entire village in order. Um, the other things I would say, alignment of goals. See, again, coming back to the syndicate point, there are this APMC Act, Agriculture Production Market Committee Act 2013. There are people who are strong votaries of that. There are people who are against APMC itself and want to remove APMC itself as a medium. Now, probably the FPO movement cuts into between that. It just wants APMC to be removed itself. Now, that's any discussion about FPOs can't happen without talking about the syndicate. Removing the syndicate in a very systematic way, but at the same time, it's very important only the syndicate to be removed, not the syndicate participants. The participants of the syndicate need to be alive, but they need to be, actively cooperating with the farmer producer organizations. And that's where APMC reforms are crucial. Probably downsizing APMC in most states is essential. MSP minimum support price procurements don't happen in most states. Where it happens, there is probably a lot of pressure and there is a lot of importance to it. That's something which is to be balanced out. The last 15-20 years I've seen that this is the problem, but in Assam it has started in the last 7 years. Significant amount of local procurement of rice happens, maize is happening, cereals are happening, but nevertheless states which produce significantly of certain crops sometimes don't get the procurement right. So minimum support price is another going to be a big support for farmers and farmer producer organizations. And finally, input supplies. Now, seeds is another syndicate. Now, not every farmer producer organization realizes that hybrid seeds are not very, very helpful. At the same time, not everybody realizes that doing organic seeds is going to be long-term sustainable easily. So this is again a big debate. There are seed producing companies which are just out there going there appointing marketing officers, जाओ बेच के आओ seeds. But then ये बेच किसको बेच रहे हैं, वो seed का real value क्या है, whether the seeds are going to be helpful in the long term, whether the fertility of the soil is going to be remaining, whether the second time the seed conservation can be done, can the seeds reconserved and reused. All these debates don't happen. Most farmers gets fooled, and when after the first fasal is over, they realize that भाई ये seeds हम फिर से reuse नहीं कर सकते. That's when 25% of the FPO members disband and go away. That's the first shock to the FPC. So all these behavioral changes, technological understandings, technical understandings about which inputs work, which inputs are long term, which inputs are sustainable, all these are crucial.